This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. Today, we're talking with our friend and the star of Faith of Angels, John Michael Finley, and we answer the listener questions: what are the actual costs of releasing a movie in theaters, and how much do you need to make to break the top 10 in the weekend box office? All that and more on today's episode. This is Truly Independent. Garrett, we're back. We got another episode of our podcast.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm feeling good, man. I'm excited to be with you. I'm excited for our guest today. We've got John Finley joining us. I can't wait to talk to him about this movie.
Yeah, no, this will be fun. And we're hearing a lot of good comments from previous episodes. So thank you to our audience that is growing and people are listening. And thank you to our sponsors.
Amazing. Well, Garrett, did you see any good movies this last weekend or this last week since we last chatted?
It's a good question. I haven't. I've been burning the candle at both ends and haven't made it out to the theaters, and I take full responsibility for that. My blame. I'll have to see 2 this week.
There
you How about
go.
you?
Good luck seeing 2.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I got invited to go see Horizon, but it was on a day where I was traveling down. I was taking my kids and our car down to San Diego, where my wife and kids are this week. So I also did not get to see a movie in theaters, but I did watch The Boys in the Boat last week, which isn't an indie film. It's like a $40 million budget. It was the company, it's like Lantern Media or something that took over the Weinstein company. And George Clooney directed it. So nothing about this movie screams indie.
Yeah.
But you know what they pulled off for $40 million, a period piece with a lot of insane camera placements and angles, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And it's very well acted, really cool story. It's hard to do because, like, if you even just watch the trailer or Google the story, it's like you know the ending before you even go in. And so part of it is, I think we share that with Faith of Angels too, because this story, it was national news when it happened in 1989. And so many people who are familiar with the story know how it ends. So it's not about how do you surprise the audience with an ending, but how do you make it surprising but inevitable? So it's the two that you're kind of balancing, and I think they did a really good job with that. Yeah. As did you and the whole crew that made Faith of Angels. We did a good job.
Well, yeah, no, it'd be fun, and I love that challenge, honestly, and I think that's what makes it. That's a skill of a storyteller. When you sit around a campfire or you're with your family telling, hey, what are those fun family traditions or family experiences? It's not because of the shock ending. It's because we love a good story, and told by a good storyteller makes it even more interesting. I will say, instead of watching a movie, I was invited down to attend a gathering for the Zion's Indie Film Fest, and so I went down to there, and they've done such a good job of creating this atmosphere and environment of filmmaker friendly people that go and celebrate films. And so they were announcing their kickoff dates for next season, as I'm sure many festivals do. And so it was fun to be able to reconnect with so many individuals that participate in the film festival.
Yeah, I'm glad they got like 3 months off from their insane schedule doing a festival. But it's not like you just announce it a month before and everybody shows up and then it's over. It's like they're spending 9-10 months a year on that amazing festival. So
okay,
very cool.
Here's a comment. This is a thought that I wanted to bring up. You mentioned Horizons, and I love that here we are. We record this on a Tuesday, so we've seen the opening box office for Horizons, and it was the number 3 movie in the country, and did like 11 million, which is more than Hollywood anticipated, or certainly. The estimates were like, we don't, this movie's not going to do 8, maybe 9. And it did 11. Variety comes out with a big social media article headlined Horizon flops at the box office, and how are they going to dig out and recover? And I love that just makes me so furious, that type of headline and summation of the movie flopped because of 3 days at the box office. And Kevin Costner has reported that, oh, we know it's going to be hard, and we're in this for the long run, and opening weekend is not everything. And that was a good reminder. I know that we're emphasizing that, and our goal of like, hey, how do we get a big opening weekend? How do we get in the top 10 and things like that? And I think it was neat to read that article and say, look, we can't get caught up in this emphasis on the 3-day opening weekend. If that's the goal and that's the play, great, let's make that our goal and play. But know that a film does not live or die in those 3 days.
Yeah, well, and that's really the difference between the studio model and the indie model, because your movie, Saratov Approach, I don't know that it was top 10 box office, but how many weeks was it in theaters? And you saw that just continue to grow and compound over time as word of mouth happened and you expanded to more theaters. And so it's a different model. And if you're trying to compete with studios that are all about opening weekend, because they know that every weekend after opening weekend is going to drop by 30 to 60%. Mm-hmm. And so they have to have the higher number they can start with, the better, then the more money they're going to make. Like Inside Out 2 has already crossed $1 billion globally in 3 weekends. Like, that's amazing. It's really cool. And I'm happy for all those people because I want to see more Pixar movies. But to have Horizon come out and have that many people see it. I mean, it released wide. It was 3,300 screens, had a great per screen average, $3,300 per screen. Like, all signs point to a success there, especially because it is an independent movie.
Yeah.
So, I'm sitting here going, they did it, man. They're kind of paving the way for indies to spend more and make more. And yeah, we're going to not judge them off of the opening weekend. We're going to judge them off of, is it a good movie? Do they get to make more? And the answer is yes. The second one's already done, chapter 2, and they're filming chapter 3. So they're fine. Like, they've already done all the things that they set out to do. So it's really about, what are you optimizing for, and measuring that, and not comparing yourself to other people who have different strategies and different goals for their movies. But as we're talking about box office, we should celebrate, it looks like, Kinds of Kindness, number 9.
Yeah.
And Jet and Juliet 3 in number 10. So Searchlight Pictures did Kinds of Kindness. I don't know if we count that as an indie. But as far as the strategy goes, 480 screens. So it looks like they added 485 screens from last weekend.
Yeah.
So that was kind of their expansion. And they did 1.576 that weekend. So this last weekend. So there you go.
Yeah.
There's the numbers. But like I was saying, number 9, 1.57. Number 10, 1.51. Well, I haven't said it yet because the movie, that's at the end of the episode. But there we go. Number 9, 1.5 million, and number 10, 1.5 million. It kind of shows us what we need to make in order to break the top 10 there. So very cool. Congrats to those movies beating out If for those spots. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's good to see that. The model works.
It does. All right. Well, very cool. I'm excited for our guest today. Why don't we bring him on? Hey, indie filmmakers and movie lovers. This show is sponsored by Purdy Distribution. Since 2011, they've been bringing incredible independent films to theaters, like Garrett Batty's The Saratov Approach, T.C. Christensen's Love Kennedy, and McLean Nelson's Once I Was a Beehive. They've worked with top-notch directors like Mitch Davis and Mark Goodman, specializing in family, faith-based, and funny films. This year alone, they've released hits with JK Studios like Go West and Villains Inc., and have even branched out internationally with films shot in South Africa and Japan. Purdy Distribution works closely with indie filmmakers, designing personalized distribution plans, whether it's a theatrical release or straight to streaming on platforms like Amazon, iTunes, Google, and more. If you have a PG or PG-13 film ready for the world, think about reaching out to Purdy Distribution. They're approachable and knowledgeable, ready to help you visualize your film's distribution. Even if your film isn't fully polished, they can offer valuable guidance. Plus, if you need that crucial distribution piece for investor packages, Purdy Distribution can provide a letter of intent to distribute, helping you secure funding without locking you into a contract. Mark your calendars for Purdy Distribution's upcoming releases: Tokyo Cowboy on August 30th, the digital release of Thabo and the Rhino Case on September 1st, Faith of Angels in theaters on September 12th, Villains Inc. on Amazon and iTunes on October 1st, and The Carpenter on November 1st. To stay updated on these releases and more, sign up for their newsletter at purdydistribution.com. That's Purdie distribution.com. Now, back to the show. Awesome. We are here with our friend, John Michael Finley. Garrett, I'm so excited we got John here. Oh my gosh.
John, good to see you, man. How are you?
What's up, gentlemen? I'm great. Having a good day.
You make our
so far. How are you
podcast
guys?
look better, sir.
I
appreciate that.
I got to bring only what I can bring.
This is true.
And
we can only do as much, right?
You brought it all.
Yeah. You guys look sharp.
Well, thank you. We do dress up for the podcast for the people that watch us on YouTube. So, Garrett, let's start with, how did we get here? We're chatting with the John Michael Finley on a podcast about our movie Faith of Angels. But let's go back to kind of the beginning. And you wrote this script. You probably had people in mind. And at some point, you saw something in John and reached out. Like, I don't want to tell the story, but walk us through how that happened.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and the nature and the theme of the podcast is truly independent. So we're going to tell this and emphasize more the independent approach to this, whereas, which is perfect, because that's exactly kind of how I approached John. When we were casting the role of John Skinner in this film, I knew I needed somebody with heart and somebody that was approachable and honestly, whose work I admired. And I remember being a fan of John from I Can Only Imagine. And so I looked him up. And John, I don't know if you remember. I mean, I think I just sent you an email or give you a random call, and you were gracious enough to respond. How did that work? What goes through your mind when you get an email from some rando?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of emotions, honestly, as someone that, was a young person in high school and college and really wanted to be an actor and really wanted to be that guy. The idea of someone just kind of reaching out and wanting to collaborate was really great and has always been a dream come true. And I've had that experience, a handful of times. And so you really do get a mix of emotions. But because it does, because it's different than the normal process, going through my agent or going through a manager and things like that, there are ups and downs, but I always find it flattering, and I always do my best to reach back out, whether it's with something positive or something less positive, and say, hey, thanks for reaching out. But this script in particular, it took me about 5 minutes to realize who I'm dealing with and what I'm dealing with, and I just fell in love. I think you left me a voicemail and then sent me an email or something like that. And, I've got at the time I had a little 2-year-old boy. So it was actually great. You leave me a voicemail, I could check it out when I had a chance. And then I think that night I read the script, because that's one of my favorite parts of the process, is that thing you can't ever go back to, is that first impression of a story or a script or meeting new people. And I had such a positive first impression that I wasn't sure what the next step was, but I thought I'm definitely going to reach out to this gentleman, and I'm very, very interested in collaborating. And that's kind of how it was on my end.
Well, I was so grateful that you responded, and that's not always typically the case with independent film. One of my goals early on was to just let you know, like, straight up what this was and who I was as far as an independent film, not anything flashy or certainly not studio backed. And we're doing this independent, but we try to take care of the people that are involved in our projects. I think I went up to the location that we had picked out for the film, and we'll have to put this on the YouTube version of the podcast, Darren. But I like finger wrote John Finley standing here, and it was a picture of a guy like fishing in a Provo River.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. And the risk,
of course.
My concern was, like, is this guy going to think I'm a clown or what?
This is what's so great. Now we have hindsight, and now we've had lunch together and dinner
Oh yeah.
together, and we've spent a lot of time together. And I think I think we enjoy each other's sense of humor, and I just have such admiration for both of you. You're both husbands and family men, and will I regret calling you good guys? I don't know, but it really was nice to. I think we were all in such a strange place post pandemic and trying to figure out, like, are things the same? Are things different? Am I the same? Am I different? Do I need to approach things differently? And it was just such a refreshing back and forth, even if it maybe stemmed from a more unusual place. But I don't think it did. Like, send me an email, send me a message. Great. I think I'm glad you took the risk and had the courage to kind of just reach out. But immediately I got really great first impressions and really fell in love with the script and the idea and everything. And then I still got to give you a phone call and we got to chat.
Oh
And
man.
there just didn't seem to be any ulterior motive, nothing that kind of raised any red flags. And so that was just such a refreshing part of this process for me.
So, John, can you tell us some of the considerations that you're making as an actor? You're coming in and you've got deal points that you're thinking about. You've got
Hmm.
schedule. You've got a family. A wife who works and children. So, like, for the filmmakers that are watching this or listening to this podcast, when they are reaching out, it can't just be like, "Will you be in our movie?" Right? There's a
Hmm.
longer conversation, but maybe give us some
Sure.
insight into what are all the considerations that you're weighing to make a choice for a few months of your life, and maybe you're going to have to end up on a podcast a year later. Like, you don't know what you're
Who
signing up
do I
for
want
when
to
you
be on a
say
podcast
yes to
with?
that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What are those
That's
considerations?
that's such a great point. Yeah, I more than ever now, and I'm sure people hit this point in their life at different ages, different times in their life, but it really has been this post-pandemic renaissance for me of not changing who I am, but really discovering what I really want, what I really need, what my family needs, what's important to me, what the risk reward situation is. And my first film was I Can Only Imagine, and I absolutely got the bug. I'm a stage actor, I'm a musical theater, jazz hands kind of guy. I love to sing, I love to dance even a little bit, and have made a pretty nice little career doing that. And I absolutely caught the bug with film and television and that kind of stuff. And but what I'm noticing is I try to think about my favorite films ever, some of the greatest films ever. They're not always the film with the highest or best quality. They're not always the film with the most successful, famous actors. A lot of these cult classics, a lot of these amazing films were done independently and were done by people that weren't household names and things like that. And so I've had a couple experiences, I won't go into detail, in the past 2 or 3 years that have really whittled it down for me. And now I think, of course, I want the script to be great. And it would be great if there were other big name people attached just to try to get some experience and try to learn some things. But for me, it's all about who I'm working with. Even as a stage actor, one of the first jobs I ever had, like, we had first rehearsal on Halloween night. We rehearsed through Thanksgiving, through Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, through New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I mean, 6 major holidays. You're not with your family, you're not with your friends, you're with a theater troupe in a dark theater from 10 a.m. to midnight. And so I learned pretty quickly that, I would love to be doing the good stuff, elite work, but who am I working with? And sometimes those projects, that chemistry you have on set, is far more important. And so as a father and a husband, my family has to be taken care of first and foremost. So to get directly to your question, and I will often negotiate a lot of my contracts. First things first is whatever it takes to take care of the babysitter, take care of whatever family members might be coming in to replace me. Right now, I'm basically a stay-at-home parent. And so all of our needs are going to have to be taken care of first and foremost. And then after that, then I kind of get to think about, okay, do I want to get paid for this? How do I want to get paid? Are there any perks that I'm interested in? But I'm in a good place right now where I've done a few good projects, but it's not like I'm a household name. So for me, it's a lot about I get to pick and choose the things that I really want and that I really need. But for the most part, I want my family taken care of. After that, it's not all fun and games, but then I'm there to have fun.
Yeah. John, you said you're not a household name. That depends on the household, my friend. Uh,
Yeah, I can't go into certain Walmarts in Alabama, but other than that, yeah.
um, you mentioned your first film was I Can Only Imagine, and
Mm.
I'm curious at the time of shooting that, did that feel like an independent film, or what was it like to be on set? I mean, it's a significant film. We're huge fans of the Irwin brothers, and certainly Dennis Quaid is
Yeah,
been on our radar for a long time.
sure, sure. Yeah, it's first and foremost, thank you. And we are so, so proud of that
Mm.
project. And, we filmed it in 2016, almost 10 years ago, and it came out in 2018. And it continues to deliver. It continues to impact lives and be an inspiration for people. And I'm so honored to be a part of that. That was my first film ever, my first experience ever, my first being on set, my first any of that. So I couldn't tell you if it felt
Yeah,
independent or if
yeah,
it felt like a studio film. I can tell you it felt very professional to me, and not just because Dennis Quaid was hanging around and some other really, really accomplished actors were on that set. Um, but mostly because, and we've talked about this before, there was just an atmosphere of, and I don't even think it's because it was faith based. I've been a part of other faith based projects that, the atmosphere wasn't necessarily a faith based atmosphere. I guess I'll put it that way.
sure.
But just kind of from day one, you mentioned the Irwin brothers. These are guys that started from the ground up. These guys were camera operators working for ESPN 20 years ago on the sidelines of Alabama football games. These guys just fell in love with the camera and fell in love with storytelling and picture art. And 20 years later, they're some of the top guys in their business, and they've really managed to hang on to that humility and that sense of independent filmmaking. But now they're in a situation where they went from making one film every 4 or 5 years to 4 or 5 films a year.
Yeah,
So they're kind of doing a completely different thing
yeah,
now, and I love to see them doing that. Yeah, imagine all I knew was that mom and dad were happy. I use that analogy a lot. It's like you don't have to hear mom and dad yelling at each other to know that maybe mom and dad are going through some stuff. As an actor, I don't have a ton of responsibility. I got to learn my lines, I got to know my character. But, I'm not a producer. I'm not running around like a chicken with the head cut off getting things done. So I really get to sit back and just kind of observe. And I observed just such a wonderful atmosphere, a calm atmosphere, and so I knew, even though I had no experience, that things were going pretty well. I grew up with that song, I Can Only Imagine.
yeah,
And I was young and arrogant. So I just assumed it was going to do well. Like, I was like, this song is a hit. Everyone loves this song. It's a number one Christian song in the world for the past 15 years. Like, this movie's going to be great. So I never had any doubts in kind of a young, naive way. And then when it had success, it really just kind of cemented a lot of those experiences I had. Had a great time.
good,
So
good.
thanks for asking. Yeah.
As independent filmmakers, what are things that we can do to make an actor like you or Dennis Quaid or whomever it is, you come on set and you feel comfortable and you're like, okay, this is when you mentioned, mom and dad getting along. What
Sure.
what
Yeah.
can we do to make you go, okay, I want to be a part of this type of project?
I think similar to
Besides good craft.
as yeah. Besides good crafty and some good uncrustables or something at midnight. I think it's a similar thing to what I shouldn't say what good parents should do because that's pretty subjective, but a lot of life is turmoil. A lot of life is a whirlwind, and if we can protect our children from that, even for a short period of time, and give them a nice childhood, sometimes that's the goal. And I think as actors, not that we're the children on set, but it can be terrifying. You're kind of brought in, and you're usually the last one brought in. You usually have the least amount of information, the least amount of communication. You're just kind of expected to take the script and take your character and make the most with it. I think a lot of actors, especially when they show up on day one, we don't know what we're getting into. And no amount of phone calls and emails and promises and prayers really really help that much until you're there day one, you're in your trailer, you meet the people you're going to be working with, and then you figure out, okay, this is what it's going to take for the next couple days or couple weeks. And so there's a lot of variables that we just don't know. And so a lot of times it's just, I don't want to say pat us on the back and make us feel comfortable, but a lot of it is like, hey, you just flew in, you just got your rental car, you just unpacked your bags in the hotel. I think communication is what I'm getting to. And maybe not every actor feels that way, but a lot of times I'm left out of a lot of those conversations. You guys know I had a lot of questions for you guys. And I think a lot of times giving the actor the game plan, a lot of times the actors don't get the game plan. The whole crew gets the game plan, all the producers get the game plan, your wives know what the game plan is, but your lead actor is somehow left out of like, what's the game plan for the day, for the week? And so a lot of times that communication is very, very helpful. But that's my experience.
I didn't know that actors read the game plan when we sent it.
I only read the subject of the email, as you know full well.
We try to put as
Not
much
much more than that.
information in the subject as we can.
Yes, yeah, yeah. If it's not in all caps in the title of the email, I'm not going to read
No,
it.
it's a good tip. I think as independent filmmakers, there's often so much going on, and we're wearing so many different
Yeah,
hats that it's easy to forget that hey, not everybody is up to date on the information, and sometimes there's that assumption of hey, it's just kind of a need to know basis, and maybe you don't need to know this, and but
for
then
sure.
if we put on that other mindset, we say, look, it sure might help him to know this full big picture so that he can decide, let you parse through the information you need to know as an actor.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good tip. I think that also extends toward this distribution side of it. Darren and I are having this daily discussions about, okay, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do the podcast blitz, and now we're going to release the trailer. And we release the trailer, and I get an email or two from various actors in the movie. They're saying, hey, what's going on? Like, cool trailer. It looks amazing. What can we do
yeah,
to
yeah,
help?
yeah,
And I might go, what can you do to help? Everything. And yet I haven't
yeah, yeah, yeah.
communicated that. And so that's a
Sure.
helpful reminder to hear you say that.
And that's I know Garrett. I play baseball on the weekends and stuff like that, and I play with guys that are 40, 50, 60 years old. We can't have a practice in the middle of the week. Like we can't get together and come together as a team and work on things. Like we meet once a week, and if I can't share with you via email the game plan, but that sometimes that's all it is.
Yeah,
Like I got a pitcher, and it's like we're not in the major leagues, but if we can both just have a game, sometimes a game plan is better than no game plan.
sure.
But you know how hard it is. Once the actor's on set, that means the train is going. We're on the tracks, and the train has already been set. We're off. And so a lot of times, yeah, you can't sit down and slow things down and have that conversation. So I'm sure it's really, really difficult, but I think, each of us play our own puzzle piece, and I'm sure there are times we take for granted uh, what other puzzle pieces need to do their job. But that's the fun part of collaboration. If you're communicating, you're gonna be okay.
I think
Yeah. I remember the first day was like a big packed day for you. We had to get you in hair and makeup and make you look like the actual John Skinner.
We had to get a
I
haircut and
picked
a shave. Yeah, like we had
Yeah,
to
you had
start
long
from
curly
scratch.
hair and we had to
Yep.
chop a lot off.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
you the 80s mustache.
Yeah.
But one thing I appreciated was I got to pick you up from the airport
Hmm.
and we had about an hour drive to set. And you were just not pestering, but just like question after question. Tell me about John. Tell me about what he's like. Tell me about what does he exude? What's his essence? And I was so impressed. But I think continuing on with this idea of communication and making sure that your experience coming into a set is good, I was really impressed with you knew what you needed. You're like, I need to sit down with John. I need to meet him. I need to talk with him. I need to make sure that I have time to get into my trailer and kind of get things set up. And
Hmm.
so a lot of it was thinking about, okay, my job today is not to be on set and monitoring camera and making sure there's no fires to put out. My day is with John and to make sure that your experience coming in was exactly what you needed it to be. Because what I tell people all the time, my job as a producer is to protect the creative space for the creatives to do their best work. And if
Hmm.
you came in and you got picked up by somebody who you'd never talked to before and you'd never seen a picture of, and they got your name on a poster, and then they're blasting music that you don't like on the way there, and then they're like, hey, you're here, and you have no idea where to go. That's not a great experience for you to then transition into, I got to be on set tomorrow and portraying a human being. So
Sure.
did we do a good job, I guess, is part of my
You
question,
did
but
you did it
also
you did
like,
it you did a great job. Yeah, go ahead.
did we
No,
do
you
okay?
go
But
ahead and
talk
finish
to
your
us about
question.
that first day and meeting John, because that was kind of a unique experience. Being able to
Hmm.
our base camp was next door to the actual John and Chris Skinner's house, which is
Yeah.
pretty insane how that
And
worked out. But
it's
what was
it's
going
it's
through your
yeah.
mind and wanting to meet and talk to them?
I I'm willing to admit that I do everything I can to show up to work and be low maintenance, calm, don't need anything, prepared, ready to go, like make adjustments. But in order to prepare to do that, I have to like let my anxiety and my paranoia and all of my insecurities out. And I can do a lot of that at home on my own by preparation, getting into the story, getting into my character, learning my lines. But a lot of that can't happen until we organically meet in person. So for me, it was a lot of butterflies, not about the work, but about what is this atmosphere going to be like? I had really, really great conversations with both of you via FaceTime, over the phone, via email, via text message. But once again, when my plane touches down in Utah, I'd never been to Utah, you know what I mean? Like now here we go. Um, and I don't think it has anything to do with whether it's a lead actor versus a supporting actor versus a small ensemble role. It has nothing to do with like, okay, am I playing a lead? It's more about, okay, if I am a lead, I likely have more days on set. If I am a lead, I likely have more camera time. And in my opinion, I have more responsibility. And so if I have more responsibility, I want to be more prepared and I want to have, more of that stuff set in place. So we had a great time. I love that you picked me up. But that was really just my insecurity and my anxiety of peppering you with questions. Those are my questions of like, I can't lay my head on my pillow and get another good night's sleep until some of these questions are answered. And then another part of that was, and I may have said this to you, Garrett. I don't know if I said it word for word, but in my mind, I'm thinking, we're not turning a camera on until I meet John. Like I can't put wardrobe on until I've at least FaceTimed him or met him in person. And so one of the first things we did, thankfully, was pretty much go straight to John. And the story is actually I was getting a haircut and getting a shave and a beard trim, and literally have the apron on, and John and his wife walk in. So I got to cross those things off my list in the drive to the canyon, and then in the chair, and then once that was over, all the weight was off my shoulders. Once I had seen John and met John, and once I had peppered you both with 3 dozen questions, that's what I needed. And then I was like, okay, good to go. Other than that, it's like there was a guy. Jersey Boys is a very very famous musical about Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, and it ran for a very long time on Broadway. And one of the guys that played the Frankie Valli role, people asked him, "What's your preparation? You do 8 shows a week, 400 shows a year. Do you have this long Meisner Stanislavski prep?" He's like, "Nah. As soon as I put that jacket on, boom, now I'm Frankie and I just walk on stage
Wow.
because the preparation is already done." And I found that like once we got to set, once we were at day one, it's like once I saw my mustache and once I put the jacket on, like I'm John Skinner, baby. Here we go.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, you guys did a great job.
Well, you came very prepared, and I was so grateful for that. I did appreciate that, even though this film, there's a very independent nature to it. Uh, you treated it as if it were the next Oscar contender as far as the amount of research and preparation that you did, and I love that. When we cast an actor in a lead who's doing a large role based on a true person, that research is imperative. And I love, as a director, having conversations with my actors on set. I say, hey, once we start rolling, that's your role. You own that part, and I don't get to interfere with that. Um, but man, I just loved the amount of time that you gave me up front to just like question and pick my brain and really get an understanding of
Hmm.
where I'm coming at as far as this character goes in this story. And then you were able to develop this character in his life. It was just amazing. It was so cool to see.
You guys did such a good job of really setting the world up. You know, I'll admit as an actor, I'm far more emotionally driven, you know, much more driven by the heart than I am the brain. You know, as an actor, I am, you know, a cerebral type person. But once again, you know, showing up in Utah, meeting you guys for the first time reading the script, a lot of it is my first gut emotional reaction. I'm very much a gut person and an emotional person as an actor. And so a lot of that stuff was just giving me the freedom and giving me the room to have my emotional reaction, but really setting up the space and getting into that 80s vibe, getting into that Utah vibe, getting into the world that we were in. You guys made it really, really easy. And as far as the professionalism goes, you know, I think half the coin is the arrogance of an actor. You know, I think every actor wants to be that guy, you know. And so I think part of it is just my own ego, and then I think the other part of it is, you know, going back to baseball because I love baseball. You know, you won't find minor league players acting like minor leaguers. They're all going to prepare like major
Mm,
leaguers. Even in college, you know, these college coaches, they're trying to teach these young men to be professionals. And we're going to start now. You're not a major leaguer right now, but you're going to prepare like a major leaguer. And I feel the exact same way. You know, whether I'm doing a very, very small independent film with a tiny budget in the middle of nowhere, whether it's somewhere in between or whether it's a big budget studio film, yeah, to me, I'm in the major leagues.
yeah.
And this is my not my legacy. That's way too heavy-handed, but this is my work. This is my portfolio. I'm not going to come phone it in, no matter what the stakes are. So I'm going to dig in, and we're going to make the most of it. And I had so much fun doing that with you guys.
Well, it shows. We had a blast, and that level of commitment shows in all your work that I've seen. We were so glad to have it
Thanks.
part
Thanks.
of this. Um, we are putting this in theaters and releasing it September 12th in theaters regionally, and then more nationwide September 26th. As an actor, what do you in an independent film? What do you perceive as the role? How important is it for an actor to be involved in the release of the film or promotions or talking about like that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a very good question. I think,
Well, I'm going to hold you to whatever you say because
yeah. Well, that's I got to be careful then. No, I do feel going back to kind of the responsibility. You know, whether I'm a lead role or whether I'm, you know, a wonderful part of the ensemble, uh, I'm gonna want to be a part of that process, and I think that's just me personally. You know, I want to support the projects I'm doing. I want to cheer for my own teammates. I want to cheer for my own team. But as one of the lead actors of the film, I do think I have a professional and personal responsibility to do maybe a little bit of the legwork, you know. And I just mean compared to maybe some other cast members that flew in for half a day and gave us a great scene or two. Yeah, they probably don't have as much responsibility to kind of pick up some of the legwork. But if they wanted to help out, we could sure use their help. But certainly as being part of this team, I certainly feel a personal responsibility, but also can't wait to like once again be a part of this team. If there's anything I can do to help out, yeah, I want to help out. So there's always a lot of gray area, and I know this is in some ways this is a point of contention for some actors, and I think it's really when they become household names.
sure.
But as an actor, I want to be part of this process. You know, my job is done for the most part, but if I can do anything to help promote or support this film, then yeah, I want to be on that team for sure.
Yeah. It's an interesting, delicate balance, and I love hearing you say that. And as a filmmaker and the producers, we have to say, look, we hired you as an actor for a job, and you've
Hmm.
delivered. And you know, I'm saying you, but any actor, we hire them for the job. They come in and deliver and do that, and that's great. Unfortunately, what happens is you become friends along the way. You're like, hey, now what do we do?
Yeah,
Let's hang
yeah,
out. Let's do stuff like that. And
That's the worst
I,
part.
I love that part of it. That, and we've
Yeah.
stressed this on the podcast. It's about the relationships, right? At the end of the day, hey, the script might on a future project, maybe the script is just okay, or the pay is low, but my goodness, if we get to work with people we enjoy working with, yeah, that's enough to say yes to a project.
Well, we're taking something that's very personal and very heartfelt and very important to us, and now really what we're doing is now showing it to everybody else.
Yeah,
And they are under zero obligation to pat us on the head and tell us we're pretty. This is really
yeah,
where we take it out there
yeah,
and say, okay, well, what do you think? And we have to be okay with what they think. We can't really bully people into liking our movie. And so, but I think that's the fun part. This is the part where it's like, now we get to see, what type of reaction do we get? Is this impacting people in this way? Is it? So I think it's the fun. It's not a fun. It's probably not a fun part of the process. But once again, back to that. If I'm going to spend 6 holidays with a group of people, if I have to go on a press junket with you two, at least it's two dudes that I like to hang out with. If we have to leave our families and go on tour and do all these, honestly, the part of the business that we didn't necessarily sign up
yeah,
for. It's as an actor, I want to go tell good stories. I didn't necessarily go to the part of school where you learn how to do interviews and you learn how to walk a red carpet and you learn how to be on a Tonight Show or a late talk show. Like you don't really get those skills. And so it's part of the process that you have to kind of realize this goes along with the business. And if I can surround myself with talented people and talented artists, but also good people that we kind of have similar priorities and a similar game plan, I don't know what else you can do.
yeah.
Hope you strike lightning in a bottle after that.
So, John, thank you for your time today. We want to be respectful of it. We've already probably hit our time, but I'm curious, is there anything that you would like the audience to know about this movie, or anything you want to say to the audience that's listening to this podcast? We might even clip this out, put it on social media, but
Sure.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you want to tell people about this movie?
That's a tough one. I want to say that this is the second time I've had the opportunity to not only tell a true story, but the character that I'm playing is still alive, and I can pick their brain and talk to them and converse with them and fellowship with them. And that's such a unique experience as an artist and a storyteller and an actor. Um, but a lot of that is just personal to me. What I think can be personal to everyone is not only the true story aspect, but the idea of this community coming together. Um, I don't want to do one of these whole, the world we live in right now, because I think every generation since the beginning of time probably gave one of those speeches. But let's take the faith-based aspect of it and set it aside. I think just in general, as a father and a husband, there's just a lot of junk out there. And a lot of things are based on violence and revenge and justifying some act. And I think it's so nice to see something, um, not that's even more mild, because I think these are real issues that we deal with on an everyday basis, but just some good stuff. It's just good stuff. It's good people. It's good storytelling, and I think people will really, really connect with this. But this is independent. This will likely be released on a limited number of screens around the country, and so help us out. Go get the word out. People in my hometown, for instance, like my hometown is probably not a place that this will get to. But I'm going to have people go to our local theater and demand, say, hey, you got to bring this film. Our homeboy, John Michael Finley, is going to be in it. And so go do that. Go to your local cinema and say, hey, I don't know who decides and who picks, but this is a film we want to be brought close to us. This is the type of content that my family and that my children need to be seeing. And I think that's very important. Don't forget that you have a voice, even in this day of social media in 2024, where you feel like your voice goes unheard. So,
It's awesome. John, it's so good to see you, man. Thank you very much for taking some time and chatting with us. And I can't wait to roll this
yeah,
out and have you. I feel your support, and we'll have you out here for a premiere, and then
it's going to be
it'll
great.
make it
Yeah,
fun, make
yeah,
it an experience.
love working with you both. Love chatting with you both, and love collaborating with you both. So thanks for inviting me, and looking forward to seeing how things turn out.
Let's find a baseball script we can do next.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Damn Yankees movie revival
Perfect.
or
Love it.
something. Yeah,
All right, man.
yeah. We call it Darn Yankees. Okay. All right,
We can
guys.
bleep that,
Have a
right?
great day.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, we can bleep it out. See you guys.
Well, there it is, John Finley. What an amazing actor and individual. I've loved getting to work with him, and how great that he was able to come and share his thoughts.
Yeah, he's been a dream to work with from day one. It was definitely the right person to cast, not just because of his talent on screen, but because who he is off screen. He's just an incredible guy. Like, I cherish our text message threads because he's got his kid down for a nap and he's like, "Hey man, how's it going?" Like, yes, yeah. I get to chat with John again today. Like, he's so cool. And I just love how we've been able to work with him and how open and generous he's been with his time. He came to the Zion Film Festival premiere, the screening there. He performed a song at the festival. Like, he's just so giving. Such a great guy. I did want to bring up or touch on something he said, which I think is an interesting thing, at least the way that I think about actors and actors being producers. So a lot of times, in order to get an actor of John's caliber or Cameron's caliber, I've seen it on every movie I've worked on, the main one or two or three actors will also ask or negotiate for a producer credit. And I'm very much of the mind of like, producer credits are earned. Like, you gotta do, what is the producing work you're going to be doing? So we're not just handing it out, but it's kind of customary to just say, yeah, you also get a producer credit as part of your pay. And so one thing he said was, the parts we didn't necessarily sign up for. And I don't think he meant anything by it. But I think as producers, when you're talking to actors in these types of movies, it's important to say, look, if you're going to be a producer on this, you're going to not work for free, but you're going to help promote the film. Like, you're getting back end, you're going to participate in the upside of the movie. So the more you contribute, the greater the upside is and could be. And so if an actor's getting a producer credit, I really feel like they need to understand what they're signing up for. They're signing up for promotion. They're going to come on our podcast. They're going to come to the screenings. They're going to be a part of it. They're going to talk about it online. They're going to give us access to their audience and their people that they can reach with their social media platforms. Because otherwise, you're just giving away a producer credit. I don't see any reason to do that. I'm curious your thoughts on it, if you agree or disagree, or if you've got a different way of looking at it.
I think you're right on. I think that that shows that the actor, whoever it is that is signed on to be a producer, like you say, you need to earn that. That there is an awareness that a lot more goes on after the cameras stop rolling. And we finished shooting. John left Utah October 4th, 2003, and here we are in the middle of June or July 2004, and we're still having conversations about the movie, and we're just maintaining that. And he's always checking in, and I love that. I did a movie years ago, and it's an independent movie. We were releasing it in the theaters. It was doing very well in theaters, but it was one of these kind of self-release, self-distributed thing. And I'm going to screenings on Friday and Saturday. I'm driving around Prince on Monday. I'm doing theater checks, and I'm like, it was, I think at 10 o'clock at night. And one of our lead actors, who had other obligations, hadn't participated in the premiere or any of the screenings or the Q&As or any press, which is fine. That he wasn't contractually obligated to do that. But there had been some sort of misunderstanding or typo or something, and he called me up and really just kind of chewed me out for this being such an independent effort and ruining his name or whatever it was, and it was clearly a misunderstanding, and we're dear friends to this day. But that's the opposite, I think, of what we want our actors to do, and say, especially if you're going to be a producer, you know that there are going to be bumps in the road. Nobody has ever made this movie before. I keep telling, I tell that to our crew. Guess what? Nobody has ever made this movie before. We get to figure out how to do it. And that's the same way with distributing. Nobody's ever distributed this movie before. We'll make mistakes, we'll learn a lot, but we want to be in the boat together. Like nobody's standing on the shore yelling at us. And so John is definitely in the boat with us.
I love that. Love that a lot. All right, let's get to some listener questions. We got 2 that came in this week. So the first one's for you, Garrett. Is there just an upfront cost for the theatrical release, or are there ongoing costs to keep it in theaters beyond, the obvious marketing spend to just keep awareness online? But someone was basically asking, like you guys were talking about, it's going to cost a certain amount of money to put it in each theater. Is that a one-time thing, or do you need to have some money in the bank to just go, oh, now we've got this other cost because we're a month in or 2 months in, or we want to keep it in theaters? How does that all work?
Yeah. And our model is to make sure, the costs are more associated with the marketing. We don't four-wall movie theaters, so we're not paying a theater to book our movie. We're not reserving an auditorium. So the costs are creation of the DCP and the poster and the content, shipping that out there, and then creation of awareness and marketing that. So yes, I'd like to spend 75 to 80% up front to get that thing, to create the groundswell, and you do that a week or 2 in before the movie release. And then as the movie releases and there continues to be an interest, you want to have, the remaining 15, 20%, 25% to pour fuel on the fire. So that's the only continual cost, but you're not ever paying a theater to hold your movie longer.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance in this stuff. I think I didn't know that until 10 years ago, right? I was just like, oh, I thought we had to pay to keep our movie in theaters. No, it's the supply and demand is the other way around. Like, it really is on the theater booker to say, what's the most profitable movie we could put in our movie this weekend? And there is a bet when it comes to independent films or films that you're not thinking are going to be number 1 that weekend. Like, if it's a new Marvel movie, yeah, that's obvious. They're going to book it. They're going to put it in 2 or 3 screens in their 10 theaterplex, and they're going to sell out all of them. Like when Inside Out 2 was out, there were like 25 showings every single day because it was playing in 4 theaters in a 16-plex. It's like, okay, we get that. So it's supply and demand. If there's a theater open, and I'm using current examples, but if Fall Guy made $71 last weekend and you've got a new movie like Faith of Angels coming in, it's likely that Faith of Angels is going to make more than $71 for that theater. So they'll swap out the 15th week of Fall Guy for the first week of Faith of Angels, and it's just supply and demand. And so it's an interesting world that I'm loving, like playing in and getting into all the numbers. So super fun.
Yeah. Then you add compound to that and say, well, they won't swap out Fall Guy because of agreements with large studios saying, if you keep Fall Guy another week, we'll give you X, fill in the blank movie. So there is that nature of still, it's an independent, it's a David Goliath independent thing. We have to prove that there is an audience there.
Yeah. All the more reason for the audience to buy into this and really support this film, because we're going to need all the help we can get.
Yeah, that was a good question, Darren. So second question that has come in is, how much do you need to make to get into the top 10 box office? This is one you can tackle.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for this one because I did some research and I got my spreadsheets out and did some numbers and all this stuff. So if you look at the first half of this year, because now we're in July as we're recording this, so we have data for the first 6 months of 2024. Now, there's no guarantees. That should be first off, right? You don't know who you're going to be up against often. You don't know how other movies are going to perform. And there's no guarantees here. But I will say, if you were to make $3 million in a weekend, you would be in any of the top 10 weekends, or you'd be in the top 10 of any weekend this year if you had $3 million in one weekend. Now, most independent movies don't do that. A lot of them don't do that in their entire theatrical run, let alone their opening weekend. So the rest of the data is the lowest top 10, like the lowest number 10 movie was $750,000 in one weekend. So that's the lowest that anyone had made in order to break the top 10. And then the average, if you average out the 26 weeks of this year so far, was $1.5 million. So as you're kind of thinking about your strategy for releasing your movie and going, okay, I need to at least hit 1.5 if I want to break the top 10. Well, how does that work with everything else we've talked about? Number of screens, per screen average, et cetera, so that that's part of your plan. And as I was thinking about that and looking at it with Faith of Angels versus The Carpenter, it's like, oh, I think we could get there with The Carpenter. Based on 600 screens, that's like $3,000 a screen or whatever the math turns out to be. It's going to be harder with Faith of Angels. It might be that we get there week 3 or week 5 with some word of mouth and with expanding to other theaters. But trying to do that in 25 screens is going to be a very Herculean effort. So, curious your thoughts on that. Have you thought about that as well?
Yeah, no, that's exactly the math, and I love spending the time to research that and to look at those numbers. I think it's important to remember that being in the top 10 is our goal for The Carpenter, and we're designing our model based on that goal. So we've selected the number of screens, and we'll select key areas and so forth, and even our marketing effort and our spend will be heavily weighted in order to try to reach that benchmark, that goal. Not being in the top 10 is not a death knell for a movie. Faith of Angels has an entirely different release strategy, so I don't expect to be in the top 10 box office on September 12th because we are opening in fewer screens. That one we discussed in a different podcast about the per screen average is what our focus is on that one. So I think your research holds true, Darren, that it's a daunting number. To be 1.5 million for any independent film, that's a big ask. To expect to do that in an opening weekend on a limited number of screens, we're definitely shooting for the moon. So but that's a fun goal to work for.
Yeah, I think you got to look at what's the outcome and then reverse engineer from there and say, can we do it based on the strategy we're implementing? I mean, a 1.5 million in a weekend is 150,000 tickets. Can your audience support getting 150,000 people to a theater in a weekend? Most independent filmmakers that I know, at least, can't do that. They don't have 1 million people on their email list or on social media that they can message and say, go get your tickets now, right? We're talking about hundreds or thousands of people that we can reach with our marketing, our direct marketing from our own personal brands, which is why we're so focused on building an audience so that next time we've got more people we can reach. And next time we got more people we can reach. So that's certainly part of it, thinking about what's the outcome and does your strategy even give you a chance? Because if you're saying, well, I have to have a $30,000 per screen average, you're not going to do that.
Oh, not going to happen. Yeah.
But what that means for The Carpenter is we need $2,500 per screen average. It's very possible. But also I wanted to touch on why does it even matter? Why does it matter to be in the top 10? And my answer is I get a lot of like industry newsletters. I'm subscribed to a number of them. I look at industry, online magazines. I look at the trades all the time. And a lot of these outlets report on the top 10 box office for that week. So it's just free awareness. It's free marketing to say, oh, such and such newsletter with 400,000 subscribers or whatever, Variety or Hollywood Reporter or whatever it is going to say, hey, in the top 10, breaking the top 10 this week is The Carpenter. And everyone's going to go, what is The Carpenter? I've never heard of that movie. And they click and they go to IMDb or they go to Fandango or they go to their local theater and they click on a trailer. And that's free awareness. It's free marketing if you can break into that. And so it behooves you to try.
Yeah, it's earned marketing. And you want to be loud enough that you can't be ignored. And the bigger media outlets that do report those top 10s would oftentimes ignore a movie like The Carpenter. And so be loud enough that you can't be ignored. Be like, guess we have to print about The Carpenter. That's great. Well, and now they'll want to do it. They'll want to do it once they see the movie. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, it benefits them at that point, right? If they don't, it's like, why aren't you guys talking about this? It's a good free story to report on. This little indie from Utah is breaking box office records. Like, yeah, you should definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, another great episode in the bank.
Thank
Amazing,
you,
Garrett. It's good seeing you
thank
today. Thanks to John Finley for joining us. Please go over to 3coinpro.com or faith-of-angels.com. We need your support. We need you to come and participate and be a part of the movement that's getting this movie in theaters. So please go check it out. Watch the trailer, share the trailer, tell all your friends the exciting things coming as we release this movie in theaters in September. Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified of trainings and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.